Welcome to Season 2 of the Erotic Realm podcast, where we explore the world of eroticism, one erotic realm at a time. I'm Em, a sexologist and kinkster. The mission of the Erotic Realm is to humanize desire in all of its forms, including darker desires. Each episode, we dive deep into the psychology of desire with a sexpert, everyday kinkster, or a kink expert. This is an independent podcast. To support it, please consider becoming a paid subscriber at psychologyofdesire.com, where you'll also find deep dives into desire and surveys that you can participate in. You can also sign up there to get the podcast delivered directly to your inbox when it's released. If you'd like to support the podcast, please consider checking out the brands that support the Erotic Realm. There's Firm Tech, whose tech ring offers fascinating insights into sexual health by tracking erection quality and nocturnal function. Splash Blanket, who create luxurious waterproof blankets designed for comfort, intimacy, and real-life messes. ProDX Health, who offer discreet, at-home STI testing. While Karoo and Lovents make premium pleasure technology, from couple toys to long-distance interactive devices. Then there's Lioness, who are doing something truly unique in sex tech, using biofeedback and orgasm data to help people better understand their arousal. I'm also partnering with Flow and Desire, science-backed libido support supplements designed to support sexual vitality and well-being. These are brands that I find genuinely interesting, science-backed, and I've used them myself, so they come with my recommendation. You can find the links to all of them in the episode description. If you try them, use the links below. It supports the show at no extra cost to you. And now, back to today's conversation. The following conversation explores what happens when someone stops fighting their desires and begins discovering the vulnerability, healing, and unconditional love hidden beneath them. In this episode, I'm joined by the Queensman, a passionate submissive, service sub, Tantra practitioner, Latex enthusiast, and the first self-described good boy to join the podcast. Together we explore his journey from years of hiding his desires to finding community, confidence, and connection through BDSM. We discuss mummy dom little dynamics, service submission, Tantra, feeling states, and why he believes unconditional love sits at the heart of power exchange. Whether you're curious about BDSM, interested in the psychology of submission, or quietly questioning desires you've never spoken aloud, I hope this conversation reminds you that you're far less alone than you might think. Enjoy. Hi everyone, and welcome to the Erotic Realm. Today I'm really looking forward to exploring the erotic realm of the Queensman. Welcome, the Queensman.
Thank you very much. I'm happy to be here.
Yeah, happy to have you. So to start us off, we like to get an idea of who you are in your day-to-day life. What are you up to when you're not being kinky?
So I work in the film industry, in the Australian film industry.
Cool.
Outside of that, I have been lucky enough to travel a lot in my life. I have a lot of family, and so does my spouse, who live abroad and overseas. So, generally every year we're looking to sort of travel, either for vacation or to see family. So we're doing that often. A bit of an amateur photographer. I would really like to get some photos that I've taken from my travels actually printed and mounted up on the walls within the next year. I go to the gym 3 times a week. I'm about to start up at a new yoga studio, actually. I love yoga, and coincidentally, that was actually the first kink thing I ever went to was kink yoga at Studio Kink.
Okay.
Yeah. Funny how those two really important things in my life came together in one event. But yeah, we recently moved, and so I'm going to be starting up at a new yoga studio soon, and I'm very excited for that.
I've never actually been to kinky yoga. Can you tell me a little bit about that? I've been meaning to look into it.
Yeah, and I don't know where else does it. I'm in Sydney, and we have Studio Kink here, and they run kink yoga, and the way they do it is it's interesting because every yoga teacher approaches it differently.
Sure.
And there have been a few different teachers there over the years. But generally, their kind of philosophy towards it is we're coming at this yoga practice from the perspective of preparing your body to be tied. The studio kink is big on rope and shibari, so it's kind of like a primer before being bound and suspended.
Okay, cool. I'll have to go along sometime.
Yeah, it's great.
Mm-hmm. Okay, so let's get back to you and your sexuality. How would you describe your sexuality and your kink identity?
Mm-hmm. Well, I identify as being heterosexual. I'm attracted to women and femme-presenting people. Kink-wise, I'm a submissive, and under that broad umbrella, I typically identify as a service sub. I often describe myself as being the opposite of a brat.
Mm-hmm.
But with my spouse, my partner, we are in a mommy dom little a dynamic, and so I'm her little and she's my mommy dom, and that's sort of the main kind of or probably the most sort of core identity or archetype I would describe for myself as a submissive.
Mm-hmm. You mentioned being the opposite of a brat. Does that mean that you never like to push back against your dominant?
No, not really. No.
As in, no, you don't push back?
No, I don't push. Okay. I don't push back. I mean, obviously within the context of a consensual, agreed upon scene.
Mm-hmm.
But no, I don't. No, I want to be an obedient good boy. That's no.
Okay, cool. Well, I think you're actually the first good boy that we've had on the podcast. I believe we've had a couple of mummy doms and people exploring that, but I can't remember someone from the other side of it. So I'm sure people are curious to hear more about that. Can you tell us more about your good boy side and what it's like to be attracted to mummy doms, and a little bit about your relationship with your mummy dom?
Yeah, no, happy to. Love to sort of get into this.
Yeah, great.
Gosh, yeah. So, I mean, it's interesting. I sort of first discovered kink on Tumblr in the sort of early 2010s. And there was a lot of like a daddy dom, a little girl content on there at the time. And I was still kind of like figuring out and discovering what I liked. And that's where I met my spouse, my partner. And very, very quickly into our talking to each other there, it was just kind of almost like a compulsion within me at some point, and to call her mommy, and so I just asked her one time when we were talking, like, can I call you mommy? And she said yes, and it was kind of off to the races from there. It was a very kind of natural, I don't like the word compulsion, but a natural kind of resonance, I guess. Something kind of self-generated. I hadn't seen it anywhere. I hadn't seen it online. It kind of was just something that naturally came out of me, and naturally came out of me towards her. And, I've talked to her about this moment sort of since, and like, what was the other side of that for you? And she kind of mirrors the same sort of experience, where it wasn't something she had seen a lot of or heard a lot of, but when she heard me say it and say it to her, it was just immediately yes, like a full-bodied yes. Yes, call me that, I want that. And it kind of just started and escalated from there. And it's really one of the kind of core foundational stones of our relationship and our dynamic together. And we've been together for 8 years now, a little bit like 8.5. And so we've had a lot of time to, thank you. And we've had a lot of time to explore that play and see it kind of evolve. And it feels like in the last couple of years, that little caregiver dynamic has gotten more visible or gotten more expansive. Like I said, the daddy dom little girl thing was very sort of out there at the time. And now I feel like I see it in a wider variety. And there's even like a munch here now for caregivers and littles and pups, and there's more than just a daddy doms and little girls who are part of it. And I've met, I think, one other good boy, I guess you could say, in the community here, and there's probably way more.
Okay. Yeah, I feel like it's becoming more well known and more spoken about as well. And yeah, you're right. Before, it just always used to be the daddy good girl kind of vibes, but now it's more like mummy good boy, and as you mentioned, the pup play as well. So
yeah,
why do you think that's happening? Do you think it is because of just kink is becoming more spoken about? Why do you think there's this surgence of the mummy good boy happening?
Yeah, it's interesting. I think, why do I think it's coming out a bit more? I think it's, I mean, maybe it is just kind of the natural trajectory of anything where, you know, something sort of the parameters always get kind of broadened a little bit. So maybe the sort of daddy dom little girl thing was the first kind of iteration of that dynamic that gets a kind of mass seen on the internet, and that then encourages like someone like myself to then sort of explore the opposite of that gender wise, and then I talk about it more publicly, share it more publicly. That inspires other people, and it kind of cascades from there. I think also just we do have to acknowledge how much reach the internet has had and grown over the last 20 years. You know, those of us who can remember the 90s and remember the 2000s and the 2010s, how the kind of mass spread of the internet across all of our lives, and the way that the communities now pop up or have popped up over the internet, I think, you know, allows you to connect with people. I mean, I guess, for example, my partner, you know, she's originally from the US. So, you know, I'm here in Australia, she's in America, and we're connecting with each other over this shared kink that we sort of discovered together.
It's a long distance relationship.
It was. It was
okay.
for a long time. Yeah, so it was for a long time, and then 3 years ago, my spouse moved here to Australia, and we've been here ever since.
Oh.
Yeah, and so, and I think sort of online communities and the sort of the mass spread of online communities, particularly around kink and BDSM, the way that expands and is always expanding, and the way niches kind of come up and people connect with each other, I think that is, I think that's probably got a lot to say for why it's becoming more visible and why it's becoming more open. I mean, even just sort of case in point, I first came into the scene here in 2018 publicly, and I didn't tell people I was a little at the time. Mostly because I wasn't looking to explore that with anyone outside of my partner, so that was one side of it. But I also, that side of me, that little side of me, is very vulnerable. And the primary feeling state for me when I'm submitting and I'm in play with a dominant, the primary feeling state that I'm getting at for me is always some version of vulnerability. And so when I'm in my little space, I'm sort of at my most vulnerable, you could say. And so, and because we were long distance at the time and her not being there, I think I just had an impulse to want to protect that side of myself until I started to feel more comfortable, find my footing in the community, and eventually see others like me, that I then started to speak more sort of openly and publicly about it.
So I'm sure there's some people listening that might not fully understand this dynamic, right?
Yeah.
So I wanted to speak to that a little bit, because some people have judgment about people that like to be in their little side. So I'd love to hear from you. What do you receive by being in your little or good boy side and exploring that with your partner? You mentioned that it's a vulnerable side of you. What is it like to be in that state? How do you feel during and after a scene with your partner where you're really embodying that?
I mean, I feel amazing. I feel amazing and fulfilled, and I feel connected to myself and connected to a part of me. I've done a lot of thinking about this, not just in the lead up to this podcast, but also just in general in the last sort of year or two. I guess since we've been together in physical space and we've closed that long distance. When I'm in my little space, like, I do feel vulnerable, and it's an innocent kind of vulnerability or a naive kind of vulnerability.
Mm-hmm.
And this is just me. For others, it could be a different thing, but for
Sure.
me, that's the flavor of vulnerability that is happening for me when we are playing together. There's a naivety and there's an innocence. There's a playfulness and a kind of joyousness too, and a silliness that comes out. And that is a very light and fun place to be for me. So I'm not a brat, but I can be playful. If that makes
Sure.
if that makes sense.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And I often, as just a bit of a sidestep here, like I often feel like that is something that we as littles offer and give to our dominants, is a playfulness, a joyousness, a really loving kind of affection. That's the other big thing, is when I'm in my little space, I'm incredibly loving and adoring and affectionate. Mm-hmm. I can see in her, and I can imagine for others, that it's kind of nice and wonderful to be on the receiving end of that, to be on the receiving end of that kind of adoration and that joyousness and that loving that kind of comes out of me. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And so something I've been meditating on a little bit recently is, like, again, thinking about, like, I'm always interested in, like, the why, the intention and the why of what we're attracted to, what we're interested in, and what our fetishes are. And I always like to think, like, you have an emotional response to something, you see something, or you engage in some kind of play, and it resonates with you, and you're like, oh, I'm interested in that, I'm attracted to that, I'm curious about that. Or you do a scene and you're like, oh, that really just resonated with me in a way that I can't quite describe, and I want it again. I'm always interested then in kind of exploring that resonance and what's going on there to better understand it, so that we can have a better play. And when I really sit with my experiences with my partner and being in my little space and what's going on between us and what's going on within me, and I'm curious to wonder what other littles and what other caregivers think about this, I think that what's really kind of going on psychologically under those relationship dynamics and that play is the implication of unconditional love. For me, that really resonated when I kind of just sat with it for a while, and it kind of just sort of bloomed up in me. That, again, going back to, like, God, I feel incredibly loving when I'm in that space with her. And so then excavating that deeper.
It's interesting, isn't it? Because everything you've just described then was feeling-based and relational-based and intimate, but not sexual. And a lot of people, when they first hear these terms, they get a little bit put off because they imagine it being purely sexual and somewhat perverted, right? So it's really interesting for you to take us into your mindset and to use so many descriptive words to describe what it's like for you, and yet none of it was really erotic or sexual.
Yeah, and thank you for that. And again, like, sex is part of our relationship, obviously, and part of our play, but again, going deeper than that. Again, what's really happening.
I wanted to highlight another potential misconception here because you mentioned that you are a service sub and you don't like to be bratty. So some people might assume that you are like that in all areas of your life. You know, there's this idea that someone who has this eroticism can be a pushover, you know. What do you say to people that might have this idea of you? They're listening to you speak and might think, oh, you know, this person sounds like they just please people in every area of your life. Are you submissive in your day-to-day life in that way?
So a little bit, if I'm being honest, a little bit. I think probably a more nuanced way that I would describe it for myself is that I think I naturally respond well to leadership.
Sure.
And that being said, I've been in positions in life and also my working life where I have been the captain of the ship, and that feels great. What I would say is that I think a person who is a service submissive and feels great pleasure or compelled to follow and please people and, you know, complete the tasks, that may crop up in their day-to-day life, but in my experience, it's possibly cropping up in their day-to-day life because they haven't fully integrated that part of themselves into their life or their sexuality. And, you know, sometimes it's okay to be the kind of person who helps people and does things for people. That's fine. But you also have to know within yourself when to draw that line and how to have balance and how to have boundaries. And I think a person who's a service submissive needs to integrate that into their sex and their kink life so that they have a healthy relationship with it. And I can kind of speak from experience with that because there was a period of time in my life when I was on Tumblr and I discovered kink through it, and that was great, and I'm grateful for that platform for being the way that I found it, because I found it in a context of real people in real relationships who had it integrated into their lives, which was something that at the time was inconceivable to me. I thought my idea of BDSM and kink was just like dominatrixes in a dungeon and you pay them for a service, and that's that. Tumblr kind of opened me up to the reality, which was great. But I still had a lot of shame, and I still was repressing my desires and my interests and my curiosities, and it got to a point where being on Tumblr was a problem, and it became a compulsive thing, and it wasn't healthy for me, and because I wasn't really actually integrating my desires and my interests and my sexuality and my kink self into my life. I was just on the computer engaging with it on a screen. And that was not fulfilling. And so then in my day-to-day life, I could see instances where I was being a bit of a pushover or being submissive or not taking a active leadership role in my life in order to do the things I needed to do.
And how did you progress past that? How did you integrate?
So I quit Tumblr cold turkey one day.
Okay.
And then kind of had to go through a sort of a period of transition. Some things in my life kind of fell apart, and I kind of was then in a state of kind of starting my life over again, in a way, I guess you could say. I moved back to Sydney after being on the other side of the country for a while. Lost my job, was broke, and was kind of in the state of needing to start over again. And thankfully things started back up in a really great way quite quickly.
Yeah.
And so and sort of with that wind in my sails, I was like, okay, I've got to actually go into the real world and explore this and pursue this. And that was right around the time that my current spouse and I got together, and so the first thing I did is that I went to an educational venue here in Sydney called Studio Kink, which I had actually heard about years prior, and I just looked up what I knew they were an educational venue, so I was like, okay, so they'll have like classes or courses or something, and they did. And they had an intro to, well, they had kink yoga, and that was the first thing I signed up for.
Okay, that was your first thing. Mm-hmm.
That was the first thing. I was like, all right, I'm going to go to kink yoga. I don't know why at that point, I was also like, I'm going to get into BDSM and I'm going to get into yoga.
Mm-hmm.
And I was like, oh, well, this is a very economical way to pursue that. And I went along to that class, and it was my first time being in any kink space in person. And it was a very small class, and the instructor was really great. She only taught that one class, and then she moved away, and I still think about her because she kind of ran us through a kind of meditation as we were doing the yoga that was all about surrendering to a higher power and all that kind of stuff, sort of integrating that sort of yoga philosophy, Tantra philosophy, with kink as well. And I just kind of fell in love with yoga in that moment, and that kind of was my first toe into anything kink related. And so then I went back and I did about 6 months worth of classes at Studio Kink before I ever went to my first munch. I didn't go like every week or something like that. It was more like maybe once or twice a month to classes that they had. They had an intro to BDSM class. They had that was the main one, which was really, really great. That class gave me a lot of tools and resources and the kind of the lay of the land of the kink scene in a really practical sense about like munches, parties, etiquettes, different types of submissives, different types of dominance, and then I just kept going back to different classes on impact, protocol, etiquette, latex, any number of things for probably about 6 months, and that dispelled any sort of myths that I probably had about the community and about BDSM, and it gave me a really great set of expectations about how to conduct myself and how other people should conduct themselves to me, so that when I went to my first munch at the end of that year, even though I was sort of nervous and everything, I still kind of had I had my sort of guardrails, and I had a kind of a lay of the land. I wasn't going in entirely blind or without some kind of knowledge about the community and the landscape and what to expect of myself and expect of others. And that was a very important thing that I learned.
Yeah, I love the process that you went through. It sounds like you did it in a very considered way and a very safe way. You didn't rush it. You went step by step. I love that. Yeah,
thank you. I did. I know a lot of people who just sort of dive in and jump in, and sometimes, that's good for people. But I really, I took my time, and I always sort of encourage people to incorporate that into their, new people. I encourage to incorporate that into their journey, and always kind of point them in that direction.
Yeah, great example. Thank you. So we've mentioned a few different parts of your eroticism, and you've kind of mentioned a few different kinks, but I'm curious to hear from you. What are your top 3 kinks currently?
So I'm excited for this question.
Cool.
I'm a fan of the podcast, so I'm very prepared. Yeah. So look, I mean, at the very top of that, I have to say the mommy dom little dynamics and play. That is really my top kink and top fetish. without that dynamic and that role play, and without that, I know I would be a very unhappy, unfulfilled person.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Number two, I would have to say, is latex.
Right. Okay.
Yeah, I love similar. Without latex, I would be very unhappy.
What is it about latex?
I'm glad you asked. We love talking about latex.
Cool.
Yeah, I love latex. I love wearing it. I love other people wearing it. I love how it looks, but more importantly, I love how it feels. I love how it feels on my skin. I love how it feels on other people. My favorite thing to do at any given party is to polish people's outfits.
Mm-hmm.
That's my favorite thing. And so, yeah, like the first thing that tends to grab people about latex is how it looks. You know, it's very sleek, very shiny, very sexy. And, you know, depending on your body and how you're wearing it, I find that it either like exaggerates your gender or it nullifies it, which can be very interesting. And I know there's some people I know who are like people who wear cat suits, they look like aliens. And that's fine. You know, not everything is for everybody.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, I love latex. And so, yeah, I, you know, would see a dominance wearing, you know, skin tight cat suits and would just, you know, be enamored with it and drawn to the shininess of it. And then at like one of my very first munches, I was talking to people about latex and asking about it and, you know, where to get it and if people had it and, you know, what's the deal? I see it online, but I don't really know very much about it. And I was always talking about it in the context of other people wearing it. And then somebody said to me, well, if you love latex so much, why don't you wear it? Which kind of blew my mind in the moment that I had never considered that. And it was a bit of time before I got to try something on for the first time. But when I did, I remember so vividly and so clearly slipping on that catsuit and pulling the zipper up. And, you know, some people, like, I'm not really claustrophobic, but, you know, I can understand how latex might make somebody feel claustrophobic. But I remember zipping up that suit, and as that zipper is climbing higher and higher up my back, and the latex is constricting around my body, I just immediately in my mind, I'm just going, yes, 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 I like this, I want this, yes, yes. Yeah, full-bodied yes.
What did you like about it? Was it the pressure of the latex on your skin?
Yes,
yeah, it was.
Yes. Mm-hmm. The pressure of it, the warmth of it, again, like just the feel of it against my skin. I always say latex amplifies your sense of touch. And so it was just like my whole body was just like electric, and my sense of touch and feeling throughout my whole body was amplified. And you know, in another way, you know, I felt incredibly embodied. I felt incredibly connected to every part of my body as one unit. You know, my legs, my arms, my chest, my back, my torso, my abdomen. It was all kind of, there was no disconnection at all. It was like hyper connection even. And so then I buy some suits, and then I remember my partner polishing me for the first time. So you use silicone lube to polish latex and make it very shiny. And as her hand is just like rubbing my chest, rubbing the lubricant into my suit, it honestly felt like hot liquid was being poured down my body.
Ooh.
Which was just like I remember my eyes glazing over and just being like, this is hypnotic, this is sexy, this is incredible, like, this is amazing. I love how this feels. I love how I feel in my body. Yes. yes. And so then again, like, that's where my love of polishing people's outfits comes from, is like that experience. And like, I want to give that to people. And I'm very proud to say that I have a bit of a reputation for giving a good polish and for giving people that experience. Because if you just want to make yourself shiny, you can do that really easily, really quickly. But I approach it more like an erotic massage. Yeah.
Oh, that sounds lovely.
It is, and make it a really luxurious, indulgent, and hopefully embodying experience. Yeah.
Yeah, I haven't heard someone talk about latex, about it being such an embodying experience before. So
It absolutely is. My favorite thing is when people try on latex for the first time and they go, "Oh, I get it now."
yeah, I had the same
And
experience.
yeah, and but I have also heard stories of people wearing latex and their relationship, they see their body in a different way. Their relationship to their body changes. I know somebody who cried the first time she wore a latex outfit because she saw herself so differently. And I think a lot of people think they need to have a certain kind of body to look good in latex, and I am here to tell you that you don't. I mean, for me here to sit here and say everybody looks good in latex is probably very obvious, but it's kind of true. And there's lots of and there's more to it than just skin tight latex. I actually see a lot now of loose fitting latex, like wide leg pants and like blouses that like sort of billow in the chest and around the shoulders. There's lots of different ways that you can style and wear it, and I think I've met a few people who feel like they wouldn't look good in latex, and I like to gently push back on that and say, you don't need to have a certain kind of body to look good in latex.
Oh, thank you for affirming people out there that may be thinking that about themselves. Hopefully they'll reconsider it.
Yes.
Okay, so we've done number 1 and 2. I'm so curious to hear what's the third kink.
So I sort of vacillated on this one a little bit because I want to say bondage. But very recently I had a scene with a friend who caned me, and it was so good. It was so great. I hadn't been caned in a very long time, and it was a very sort of short. It was an impact scene that where caning was kind of the zenith of the scene, and then it came down. Whereas this impact scene was largely built around me being caned, and I was able to take a lot more hits than I thought I could, and it was so fun. And I had all these lovely bruises afterwards, and I like never bruise typically, and I sort of would sometimes get in my head about that. And so it was really kind of fun afterwards to be like, oh shit, I bruised.
Yeah.
And it's big and it's great. So like, I want that again. But no, I do think I have to sort of say that it's bondage. We talked before about the kind of constriction and the pressure of wearing the latex. And I think that's kind of a connection with bondage for me. And I think I want to put a bit more focus on that in the immediate future for the things that I do. I like being constricted. I like being bound. I always see bondage as something that can be kind of layered into just about any scene. Into like an impact scene, a trampling scene, a worshipping scene, sex, obviously. And I like that. I like that restriction. I like having those boundaries and that constriction, and going back to what we were talking about earlier, the vulnerability that it creates in me. So in those kind of scenes, when I'm bound, when my legs are in the spreader bar or my hands are in my suspension cuffs or both, that's a bit more of like a fear-based vulnerability, which is a really fun space for me to be in. Yeah, that feeling of helplessness and being at the mercy of someone else's whim and desire, that's incredibly arousing to me. And I think there's just lots of different ways bondage can be implemented. And I just got these really great leather suspension cuffs that look like they look like gauntlets. They're so cool. I'd wear them for the fashion of it, honestly, at events and stuff. So bondage is number 3.
Okay, well, thank you for sharing, and with so much detail, all of them. It sounds like you have a lot of fun with the 3 or 4 of them.
That I do.
So one of the traditions on the podcast is exploring a quote with you. And today's quote is one that I actually found on your profile. So it's from the Stoic philosopher Marcus Aurelius. And he wrote, "Be like the rock that the waves keep crashing over. It stands unmoved and the raging of the sea falls still around it." So I'm curious to hear from you. Why this quote? Why is it on your profile?
So one of the things that happened for me during COVID is I started reading nonfiction. I like reading fiction generally, but I started sort of reading nonfiction during that time, and that kind of led me to reading about Stoicism and Stoic philosophy, and that was another thing that just really resonated with me. And that is one of his famous quotes, and I like that image of the ocean, the raging ocean crashing up against the rocks and the cliff face with sort of all of its might, and yet they still fall still at the foot of the rocks. You know, I grew up in a beach town, so like I saw this a lot growing up. And the story kind of about that quote and how it kind of made its way into my sort of kink life was there was a period of time where I was giving tantric massages to people at play parties. And one of the big things for me is bringing Tantra and kink together in my own kink and sex life, and also kind of bringing it into kink spaces. And so I went to some parties and I offered people tantric massages with a guided meditation to either bring them into their top space or bring them into their bottom space, or just make them feel more embodied. You know, I left that up to them. And as part of the bottoming submissive meditation that I wrote, I repurposed that quote. I kind of rewrote it in a little bit just sort of plainer language. And the meditation all kind of guided to that moment where I would say to the person, you know, you will be like the cliff face that the ocean's waves crash against and throw all of their might and will fall inevitably still at the feet of. You know, whatever scene you're about to have tonight, whatever impact or bondage or shibari, whatever pain or discomfort or challenge that you're about to endure, you are the cliff face. You can handle it. You can take it, and you will receive all of that pain or all of that restriction, and it will all fall at your feet inevitably at the end. And so I sort of like to think about that quote, not just in my day-to-day life and its more sort of general Stoic purpose, but also in kink play and in scenes. Because what was really great was I did that. I gave that massage and that meditation to one person at the party, and afterwards, even I was kind of in a sort of hypnotic, tantric kind of state. And after I was just like, how are you? How are you feeling? And she was just like, yeah, great, good. And trotted off. And I was like, oh, did it work? Did it not work? I don't know. So, and then I did it to somebody else, that very same meditation. And afterwards, she just grabbed me and she was like, oh my God, yes, I feel it. Yes, I am the cliff face. I can do it. And I was like, thank you. Oh, I feel so ready. And the next day, I messaged her just asking, you know, hey, how are you feeling about everything, and checking in. And she said to me, Queensman, you were there with me during my impact scene. I could feel it. I could feel it. And your words were in my head that, yes, I am the cliff face. I can handle all of this. These floggers don't mean shit. They will not break me. They cannot. They cannot, and they will not. And she was like, thank you. That was incredible. That was just, yes, I was there and you were with me. And that really humbled me and really stuck with me, and kind of goes to show me sort of with that first person that, you know, like anything, not everything is for everybody. And, you know, maybe Tantra wasn't really for that person, but for the second person that I gave that massage to, it really resonated with her. And that was many years ago now. And she's come up to me in time since and said, like, hey, in other difficult times in my life, I hear you in my head. I hear it. I am the cliff face. I can handle it. And nothing that is thrown against me will break me. It will all fall at my feet.
How beautiful.
So, yeah, and so it's just it's a general quote about resilience, but that imagery I think is so captivating and so true. And I was really proud and humbled that it spoke to her in her scene and enhanced her scene.
Is it something that you use in your scenes as well? Is it something that you speak to yourself as well?
Yes. Yeah, for sure.
So you mentioned Tantra. You're deeply interested in Tantra. Did that come after you discovered the world of BDSM? Were you exploring that at the same time? Can you take us into your journey into Tantra?
Yeah, gladly. That definitely came about at the same time. So shortly into joining the kink scene here, I joined a kinky book club.
Oh, cool.
And we read some erotica, but we also read nonfiction books about BDSM and sexuality. Read a lot of great stuff, and we read like the Ethical Slut and the Bottoming book and the Topping book, and in all of those books, Urban Tantra had been sort of referenced as recommended reading. And I don't know where I had heard that word Tantra before, but I had heard and seen it somewhere online. And so I just had some kind of feeling that like, that sounds like something I'd be interested in. And maybe it was tangentially mentioned in those books. And so I suggested one day, like, hey, let's read that book next. And we did. And again, just it completely resonated with me, that book, and everything in it. It was like learning something I already knew, or rediscovering something that was hidden or buried. It was like being in a one-story house and discovering that there was a second story above you the whole time. It just was like uncovering all these things that were already just kind of latent within me. And it healed a lot for me too. I think, maybe I'll get to that a little bit later, but like, so I read that book, loved it immediately, sort of got a copy for my partner, and sort of incorporating that into my life and my practice. And this is also when I'm sort of really ramping up being into yoga, and there's obviously a connection with Tantra and yoga. And that's when I sort of discovered the sort of tantric community here in Sydney. And I wouldn't say I'm as a part of that community, certainly not as much as I am a part of the kink community. But then for a good couple of years, I would go to tantric rituals and tantric workshops here in Sydney and engage with the community and have these really incredible experiences and learn so much about sexuality and touch and intimacy and the different kinds of intimacy and having a very spiritual relationship with your sexuality. For me, I think Tantra is quite sort of open to interpretation, open to application. But for me, I define Tantra as heightening your sensory awareness to heighten your connection to yourself, to others, and the world around you. And that's kind of getting into the more like philosophical side of it. In very broad terms, that's what it is to me. Really engaging with your five senses: touch, taste, smell, sight, sound, in order to ground yourself in the present moment with the person or the people that you're with, as well as, or just yourself. And I think for me that process healed a lot for me in regards to sex and sexuality, because I grew up, surrounded by a lot of what I would say were not bad influences, but just bad examples.
Mm-hmm.
What we would now call toxic masculinity, and we didn't necessarily have that phrase at the time.
Right.
But surrounded by very bad ideas and examples and influences in regards to sex and how men should treat women sexually. And I knew all of that was wrong, and I knew I didn't want to be like that. I didn't want to objectify women. I didn't want to try to profile women and sort of trick them into liking me or having sex with me. Like, I had friends who talked like this, and people around me who talked like this, and I knew that was wrong and that was bad, but I didn't know what the alternative path was. And so I often describe it as being like standing in a spot and knowing, well, I don't want to go down that road, but I don't know what the right road to go down is. So I was kind of stuck for a long time, not really, and being very anxious and very unsure about not my sexuality, but like expressing my sexuality and embodying my sexuality, because I was very aware of how historically men have weaponized sex against women, and how they can or will or have put people in situations where they take away their agency and they compromise. Sorry, can we stop?
Yeah, sure.
Sorry. I was very aware of how, in the act of expressing sexual interest to a woman, or even just romantic interest with a woman, men can make a person feel uncomfortable or that their agency is compromised. That was very much sort of in my head, and it's a good thing. It's a good thing. But it just meant that I had a lot of anxiety because I didn't have the tools or the understanding to figure out in myself how I can embody my sexuality and my interest confidently without having sort of without applying that pressure, for lack of a better word. It made me just kind of like it gave me a pathway and an understanding of sexuality, Tantra did, that was holistic and healthy and spiritual and kind of nourishing and substantive, as opposed to like this thing that you get. You know what I mean?
Yeah. So some people listening would hear the words Tantra and BDSM, and they have, they think BDSM is all about like dark and pain, and Tantra is quite often highlighted as being like spiritual and more like light. So when they hear these two things together, they might think that, that can't happen. How do you combine Tantra and BDSM in your sexuality?
I mean, for me, it's kind of, I think it's kind of obvious, and there's so much one-to-one between the two. And I think it's when you kind of sort of take those initial first impressions and those initial kind of preconceptions, like you talked about, kind of off the table, or you let them just kind of pass. Like, yeah, BDSM can be dark and painful and all that stuff, and it's great. And Tantra can be very light and spiritual and all that. But let that kind of pass for a moment, and again, think of it in more broad terms. Like I said, heightening your senses and engaging your senses. If you look at it from that perspective, they're really so much the same. When you go to a play party, for example, there's music playing, very sort of sexy music, and there's lighting. So you've got sight and sound. You've got people in these, these outfits of leather and latex or lingerie or any number of costuming. It's another sort of sight thing that you're engaged with. And then you've got, touching latex or being hit with a flogger or being hit with a cane. There's so much sensory information happening that I think is very tantric. And so maybe in the tantric world, it's more feathers and candlelight and sitars. But you're still engaging. It's still heightening your senses to engage, to heighten your connection to yourself and to another person and to the activity that you're doing. And I suppose I approach kink with a tantric mindset, which again is to, if I go to a play party, it's to embrace all of that's around me, the people with that visual stimulus, the lighting with that visual stimulus. Again, the latex that I'm wearing is like heightening my sense of touch and making me feel connected to myself. That is very tantric to me. And I think probably the most important way it connects for me, so much of Tantra is about embodiment and embodying your sexual self. And then when you're engaging sexually with your partner or partners or another person, it's about creating an erotic environment and building that erotic energy and then maintaining it, right? That's the other thing that Tantra really sort of healed out of me, was this idea of goal-oriented sex. I again, just to take another little sidestep, I had this kind of, and again, it kind of came from a good place of like, sex is about orgasms, and I want to make sure my partner is having an orgasm every time and as many times as I am, and I don't want to be a selfish lover, and that's great. But that did also mean that I was getting into a place where it was all goal-oriented. And now I'm in a place where my approach to sex and my approach to kink is all experiential. Let's create an erotic experience, and let's be in that erotic experience, expressing our erotic selves or our kink selves. And kind of that thing of like, it'll happen when you're not focused on it. Orgasms will happen because you're not focused on them. You're just focused on creating this erotic energy and maintaining it. And so we do a lot of tantric stuff at home, and I apply that as well at parties, and when I play with friends, when we step into a scene, I want to create that erotic energy by embodying my submissive self in its fullest capacity and in its fullest expression, and be present. And so it's a lot of like it's a lot of mental work, but then there's also a lot of physical things, again, as I say, that make that happen. The ritual of putting on the latex, putting on the boots, and then you're in this environment and kind of letting all that sensory information wash over you and allow it to let you sort of sink into your subspace or your Domme space,
right?
So that when you so that I am embodying the submissive version of me that's going to be here and is going to play, and so that when that scene starts, it's very natural, and it becomes an interaction, and it becomes a passing forth, a back and forth of erotic energy as well as power exchange.
Sounds very deep and delicious.
Thank you. Yeah.
So another tradition on the podcast is bringing in a piece of research to explore with you. So this one is by Herbenick and colleagues, and they conducted a large US nationally representative study of over 2,000 adults, and they were examining the diversity of their sexual interests and behaviours. And this was in 2015, I believe. One of the key findings was that sexual interests and desires are far more varied than many people assume, and that diversity in erotic interests is common rather than exceptional. And they found a lot of interesting findings, but some of the more interesting ones for us kinksters were this. They found that some kinks were rather common. For example, 22% of the people that they surveyed enjoyed role-playing. 20% enjoyed being tied up, and 30% enjoyed spanking. So when you hear those findings, what stands out to you? Do the percentages surprise you at all? Could you
Not
have
really.
could you have imagined that before you discovered kink?
The kinks listed that you just listed, yeah, even before I really discovered kink, I think I would have, those are kind of, spanking and role play, and was being tied up the other one?
Sure, yep.
Yeah, those are all kind of those are all kind of the sort of gateway drugs into kink, I suppose you could say. So I know I'm not surprised by that at all, and I think it speaks to the normalcy or the normality of what we do and where it comes from and the fantasies that people have. And everything is a spectrum, so some people are a little more into it than others, and that's okay. But sex is an experiential, and sexuality is an experiential thing. I've been saying this thing a lot lately, that your sexuality is a form of self-expression. And it's not just this thing that we do. It's not just a goal-oriented thing that we do. It's a part of ourselves that we express, and we express with each other. And, we look for ways to, again, going back to feeling states and trying to figure out what that is for a person, or what button is being pushed with those activities like role play and kink. Role play and being tied up and spanking. I think a feeling state is being created in us when we're doing that, and exploring and investigating that feeling state and what's behind it, what's beneath it. I think that exists for all of us, and I think we're all going to be healthier, happier people if we dive into that a bit more. And again, there's nothing wrong with vanilla sex, and there's nothing wrong with vanilla sex that includes a little bit of spanking or a little bit of role play or this and that. But go a little deeper and explore what's behind that nurse fantasy or that police officer fantasy. What's an exercise that I got from one of either the new topping book or the new bottoming book was to sit with whatever fantasy you're having or whatever kink play thing that you're interested in, and try to identify the feeling state that you are in when you imagine that scenario. What is it that you're feeling when you imagine yourself being tied up, or when you fantasize about this kind of role play? And that's, for me, where I landed on vulnerability. It's all some shade of that in all the fantasies I have. It's some shade of vulnerability. Okay, well, now that I know that, now I'm in a place where I can approach a scene knowing that that's the feeling state that really excites me, or that I'm going to get to in a scene. Now that I know that, when I'm collaborating on a scene with someone, I can come to it with that intention and say things. I did a scene once with a friend many years ago when I first started to really narrow in on this, where I said, at some point during the scene, I invite you, because of course everything's an invitation, I invite you to say, at any point that feels right and natural, say to me, "No one's coming to save you." And I think that might just set off a firework in my brain. And it did. And that I could only come to that because I sat with those fantasies and interrogated a little further. I feel like we may have just gotten a little bit further away from the research article.
No. I really appreciate you sharing that. It's fascinating to hear that. And yeah, it's interesting that you highlight that as well, because going deeper can bring up these phrases or these words that can unlock so much more pleasure for people or sensations. So yeah, I really appreciate you highlighting that, because I'm sure it's unlocked a few people's brains just hearing you describe that.
Good. And it is those little things that I think make a scene great.
Sure.
And amazing.
Mm-hmm. Okay, so as part of every conversation, I ask my guests to bring along something to share that's influenced their erotic realm. What have you brought along today?
So sort of, this was another one that I sort of ummed and ahed about a little bit,
Uh-huh.
because the honest answer is Urban Tantra by Barbara
Okay.
Carellis.
Mm.
That I really can't say enough that book influenced my sexuality, my kink life, leagues above anything else, and
Mm.
continues to do so. Uh, yeah, but I've already
Mm-hmm.
sort of spoken about that a little bit today.
That's
So,
okay. I can just stay on that if you like, if you don't have anything else to
well,
share.
no, I do have another one, but I guess I
Cool.
just do need to kind of give credence once again to Urban Tantra. That
Mm-hmm.
really did just. I feel like I've absorbed so much tantra in my life and in my kink and sex life now that I kind of there's sort of there is no going back. It's just within me. It just happens
Mm.
naturally to me now that I just approach all of those interactions and situations with a tantric mindset.
Beautiful.
However, I do have another one.
Sure.
I do have another one, which was again from either the new bottoming book or the new topping book by Janet Hardy and Dossie Easton, which is this quote about kink play, which is, "These games are as real as we choose to play them."
Mm.
That resonated a lot with me. It resonated a lot with my spouse, and I remember sort of reading that and kind of immediately sharing it with her. And when I think about the broadness, or when I look at my sort of kink life and kink journey in the macro, I think there was a period of time, as I sort of talked about a little bit earlier, where I was repressing myself and I was not integrating kink and my kink desires into my life in a healthy way. I think, I didn't go through those years of repressing my sexuality, hiding my curiosities, and struggling to then embrace it all, pursue it all, and find myself welcomed into this incredible community and meet like-minded people who are now some of my closest friends. I didn't go through all of that to then not get in there and do the stuff and do it with 100% of my spirit and body and mind.
Mm.
I'm not here to sit on the sidelines and watch. I'm here to do it, live it, be part of it. And so, it's horses for courses. Everybody sort of comes at it their own way, and I'm not like in a 24/7 dynamic or anything like that. But when I am in that container, playing with my spouse, my partner, or someone else, I'm 100% committing to it, and I want to be 100% embodied as my submissive self, my tantric self, my little self. I want to commit to it and be operating at 100%.
Mm. Mm. I love the passion.
Thank you.
So it sounds like you've had some really fun experiences. Of course, you know this question's coming up. It's about your peak erotic experience. Are you happy to share one with us today from your time in the kink world?
Yeah, totally.
Cool.
I want to single out a recent thing, a recent experience. A little backstory is required. My spouse and I, we took a trip to Italy earlier in the year, and that was a big thing that we'd been working towards and saving up for. And sort of in the lead up to that, I think it can be fair to say that our sort of kink and sex life had been a bit deprioritized for kind of some understandable reasons that I won't get into. So then we go on this trip to Italy, and Italy's very romantic and beautiful, and not going to work for 2 weeks. It's amazing how much healing that does for you.
Sure.
We had a great time, and we kind of, as we were sort of coming home, we both were feeling really motivated in a lot of areas of our life, but also feeling very motivated for our kink and sex life to kind of get back into approaching that with gusto and excitement and putting that effort back in.
Mm.
And so when we got back, I said, I want us to do a tantric ritual. And I had just gotten my hands on some organic cold-pressed apricot oil and it's a thing you can get from Kmart. It's a candle wax melter. It's meant to just a regular wax melter for like shaving, but you can put oil in there and heat it up, and suddenly you've got a nice jar of hot oil. So we laid out the splash blanket. We've got the hot oil off to the side, and I gave her a very luxurious tantric massage with candles. I don't think we had music playing, but there's candles going, and just took our time having a very erotic tantric massage that escalated very quickly. And we had a wonderful, erotic, hedonistic, sexual time together. And again, approaching it with that intention of like, this is going to be a demarcation point. After this, we're kind of shifting into a space where we're going to make this a priority again. And that's natural, when you're in long-term relationships. But to do that with something that has a bit of, a pageantry and eroticism to it, like a tantric massage, was incredibly powerful and a perfect kind of cap to sort of end that period of time of going to Italy and then coming back.
I love that. Yeah, rituals are so psychologically important to mark the end and the beginning of something in that way. Yeah, really beautiful.
Absolutely. And I know it kind of can feel like it's a lot to do all of that, and it kind of is, but not as much as you think. And I fall victim to that too. Like, lay out the blanket and light the candles and heat up the oil. But then you go and you do it, and you're like, it actually didn't take as long as I thought it would.
Yes.
and it helps. It creates that erotic environment. It transforms the environment and gives it its purpose, and that makes it a sexual experience beyond just the act itself.
Yeah, very much worth the effort. So you mentioned that was marking a time where you're going to both put in more effort into being proactive in your kink life. So I'm curious to hear from you, what's something that you're looking forward to experiencing in the future? Have you got a particular kink or experience with your partner that you've got planned? What's happening in the future for you?
Not right. It's a good question, because I've been thinking about it a lot lately, and I'm just starting to like look ahead to see what's coming up, and what events are happening, and just our schedules and when we can make something happen, or when's a sort of a good time, and what to do. So I don't have all that's to sort of say. I don't have a concrete thing on the horizon yet. And, I've been in the scene for a while now. I feel confident in who I am and what I want and my ability to ask for it, relatively speaking. I still have my moments of being a shy little suppy boy. But I still feel like this, that I still feel in general like I've only just started to dig into what I can do and what I want to do. And I feel like there's still so many more experiences I'd like to make happen. I'd like to do more a tantric massage at home with my partner. We're just both, I think, in that kind of state right now where that's really speaking to us. So yeah, more tantric experiences at home with my mommy Domme. I'd like to be I'd like to do more caning and more bondage, as mentioned earlier. And I'd be interested in being involved in some group scenes, like multiple subs, multiple doms. Even being a double dommed at some point would be fun. A latex orgy. Just put it out there. for the people. Come on.
Yeah. Let's put it out there and see what happens.
Yeah.
Fun. A lot of fun ahead for you.
Yeah.
Okay, so let's say there's someone listening who is right now where you once were. They're curious, perhaps they're feeling a little bit of shame, and they're keeping everything hidden and just exploring online, and they're not sure what to do or where to go. What would you say to that person?
I would say the online space is really great and really necessary to, keep in contact with, people. I'm part of some Discord servers for my local community for us all to kind of keep in touch and share information. And that's really great. But I do feel like the online space should always kind of eventually lead you to something in person. And I really cannot say enough that engaging with your local community, that there's just so many wonderful things waiting for you, I believe, if you take that plunge. Everybody there was once a newbie, and they know it, and they should know to treat you well and bring you into the community and bring you into the space and give you the lay of the land. I'm very aware that I had a really good experience, and not everybody may have that, and not everybody may have a vibrant community around them like I do. But it is worth making that effort. Even just, you don't have to go to every munch and every party that happens. You can, only go every now and then. But it will, if you're feeling shame and you're feeling frustration and you're feeling repressed, talking about it with other people just lifts so much weight, and seeing how normal everybody is. The very first munch I went to, nobody talked about kink with me or kink stuff. It was all just it was just a bunch of people hanging out at a pub and having a good time and playing games with each other.
Yep.
And that was so great. And so I like people to sort of know that it is a very relaxed, friendly atmosphere. It might seem scary, but it's not as scary as you think. Nothing is ever as scary as you think it's going to be. And I hope and believe that there is a friendly, trustworthy community out there to welcome you in whatever capacity feels right to you. Not every community is perfect, of course, but I've also seen our community here root out the bad actors. And I've seen community members, people who have more experience, myself included from time to time, meet new people and find people who are there with the wrong idea about what the community is like and what a munch is like, and we give them the reality. I had an experience once with a guy at a munch, and he asked me if it was a good munch to hook up at. And this munch was on a Monday night, by the way. It's like everyone's got work the next day, but I'm really proud of how I acted in that moment, because I didn't sort of shame the guy or scold the guy. I just pulled him aside and said, "Hey, it's not really like that. It's more about people. It's more of a community thing about people meeting and sharing information, making friends, and sharing information about the community events that are happening and coming up. This is for us all to kind of socialize and hang out with each other and feel connected as like-minded people with a shared interest, essentially." And he was like, right, yeah, okay. And within an hour, he was gone. And I was like, great. It wasn't what he thought it was going to be, and so he left. He didn't stay and try to push it onto anyone and make it something that it wasn't. So yeah, I just can't stress enough that I think engaging with community and others in the flesh, it's good for you. It's good for your soul.
Great advice. Thank you.
Thank you.
And finally, if you had to describe your erotic self in one word today, and one word only, what would that word be and why?
Well, it's fun because you signaled it earlier, actually, which is passionate. I'm passionate about my kinks. I'm passionate about my partner. I'm passionate about Tantra, about BDSM. I'm passionate about the community. I'm passionate about sexuality and its role in our lives. And that's going back to what I said earlier about approaching it all with commitment and embodiment. with 100% of ourselves, it's the passion that's behind all of that.
Beautiful. Well, the Queensman, thank you so much. What I love about your story is that it's one that moves from the repression that you spoke about to acceptance, from feeling isolated to community, and from denying your desires to living them with passionate intentions. And I think many listeners will recognize that journey of learning to stop fighting parts of themselves and instead meeting them with curiosity and compassion. So thank you for taking us into your erotic realm today.
Thank you. Thank you so much for having me. This has been a real treat.
Yeah, thank you again. I'm Em, and this has been the Erotic Realm podcast. Thank you for listening to this episode of the Erotic Realm podcast. This is an independent podcast, and if you want to see more episodes made just like this one, you can support it at psychologyofdesire.com by becoming a paid subscriber and entering the realm with many other supporters. The mission of the Erotic Realm is to humanize kink and desire in all of its forms, and we can't do that without you. So until the next time, stay perverted.